Strap in everyone, because today we're going to be talking about the 3 things that are actually holding the Canadian housing market back from being in a good place and how this is directly impacting you, including some sad and bizarre stories of how some Canadians are currently handling their own housing problem. I think we just need to take DJ Khaled's approach to this whole housing crisis.
Put this money in your savings account. Buy your mama a house. Buy your whole family houses.
Now bear with me because I have a cold and this seems to be the only way that I can suppress the cough long enough to actually get through recording this video. Cheers. So what's holding the Canadian housing market back? Well, for starters, our housing supply production rates are actually going backwards. That's right, you heard me, we're producing less homes than we have in previous years. In fact, if you compare 2023 to 2021, we're going to build 60,000 less homes than we did back then, and that's obviously a bad thing. So much so that CMHC is saying that we're going to produce about 2.3 million homes by the time 2030 hits, but if we want to reach a balanced market, we'll have to build somewhere in the neighborhood of 5.8 million homes. That means that for every 2 homes that you see built, we should be seeing 5 built. And that's just to get to balanced. Now there's all sorts of reasons why home building has decreased, from labor shortages to government red tape, and not to forget that the cost of building a home has actually increased in the last few years as well, particularly the cost of financing that home construction. On one of my most recent videos, there was a comment by someone named Pradeep. Now Pradeep, this is not me picking on you. I'm actually super grateful that you took the time to put such a thoughtful comment on one of my videos. In fact, I'm grateful to anybody who puts a comment on my videos. I'm also super grateful when people show that like button some love, subscribe to my channel, like these people, and hit the bell notification so that they're alerted when new videos come out. Pradeep said for the interest rates to have a deflationary impact on housing, interest rates should be high enough to push the demand lower than supply. But that's only partially true, and only if you're looking at the problem from a strictly supply-oriented perspective. The Bank of Canada is in a bit of a sticky situation. They've got one tool in their toolbox, and it's a giant hammer that we call interest rate changes. The problem is that every time they swing that hammer, not only are they impacting demand, but they're also impacting supply, as we're seeing in this case. So the problem is that with each and every rate increase, yes, demand falls because the cost to support that home, the cost of financing, is increasing, but we're also simultaneously seeing supply decrease as well, meaning the effects of rate increases, at least in some part, are working against each other. Pradeep continues by saying that due to the policies that are protecting mortgage holders from the short-term impact of higher interest rates, supply is artificially lowered, leading to demand that is still higher than supply. And this, once again, is partially true. Pradeep actually hits on something here that most Canadians aren't even aware of. Right now, there is a very present trend in Canada that Canadians are refusing to upgrade their existing houses. They could be in a starter home, for instance, and just refusing to move to a home that would be better suited for their family's needs because either the cost of that home or the cost of financing that home more specifically is just more than they're willing to bear. Particularly since a lot of these people likely have mortgages that were locked into a lower interest rate. If you had a 1 or a 2% interest rate locked in and you had a few years left on it, would you leave that behind to go move into a house and take a 5% interest rate? No, and they wouldn't either. So at least for the time being, they're going nowhere. This has led to some interesting and sad problem solving that low-income earners, particularly single low-income earners, have had to resort to because they don't have 2 incomes to pool together to support housing. Some people, and there's already articles of this happening in BC, have discovered that staying in prison is actually a more cost-effective option than trying to deal with this housing crisis.
And I live in a van down by the river.
So they're going out and committing petty crimes or actively trying to increase the amount of time that they're supposed to stay in prison. And that's incredibly sad. But that all leads to the second thing holding Canadian housing back, and that's government. Because you gotta believe if your citizens have gotten to the point where they're choosing to incarcerate themselves rather than live in the free world, you as a government have failed. And I don't mean one particular government, I mean all levels of government. That's something everyone should be able to agree on. On a municipal level, I've seen investors and developers go to the city with the property in mind where one house is sitting on 2 lots, and they want to split that title so that they can build one house on each of the lots, thereby putting more families on the same piece of land. Only to be faced with some outrageous frontage fee that the developer was expected to pay in order to split those titles in order to build on it. In one case, the developer was trying to buy a $350,000 property, but the act of splitting the title alone was going to cost him about $100,000. Naturally, that developer walked away and started looking for lots on the outside of the city. So not only did that specific house not get built, but it also contributed to urban sprawl. But if we're going to talk about cities missing the big picture, I think the award for most epic fail has to go to Montreal. 2 years ago, Valérie Plante's administration came out with this new brilliant bylaw that, according to them, was going to lead to the construction of about 600 new affordable houses.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Since then, 2 years later, it's led to the construction of 0 houses.
No! 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 Fuck!
Not one single house has been built because of this new bylaw. So what went wrong? Well, the government forgot that home builders are businesses. You see, a house to a person is a home. A house to a government is shelter for its people. But a house to a home builder is nothing but a product. That is the product that they're selling. So if they're not going to make a profit, they're not going to build that thing. Basically, what Valerie's administration was trying to do was force these developers into developing these less than profitable, affordable houses or face a fine. The developers paid the fine. Naturally, when people hear that, there's bound to be someone out there who thinks then that the fee just wasn't large enough. But the problem is when you're trying to motivate someone to do something, you have a carrot and a stick, and you choose to go the stick route, if you find yourself a big enough stick, you may just chase them away and end up with less housing than you had in the first place. As an alternative though, you can also be the source of your own problems like the federal government and just straight up tell people that no, you can't build here anymore. Like what happened when they introduced the foreign buyers ban that fixed a problem that really didn't have a large impact on the market as a whole to begin with, but sure looked good for the camera, and as a result, had a bunch of foreign developers cancel their projects, most of them permanently. Government needs to be held accountable. We need to hold them accountable for fixing the real problems. Last but definitely not least, we need to talk about immigration, the demand side of the equation. And I know I've talked about this several times before in other videos, so I'm not going to cover it in great extent here. But we do need to talk about a couple things. I recently did an interview with an immigration specialist, and during that chat, he made an offhand comment about one of the real problems that we're seeing as far as immigration in terms of the numbers had to do with international students. And I looked it up. He's right. Canada last year was home to 800,000 international students. That basically means that for every 50 people that you meet, one of them is likely an international student. And all of those people are here competing for a place to rent. This large influx of people was just too big for our systems to handle in terms of housing and even the schools within which they were supposed to be taught from. There's a growing number of students that are here but sitting on wait lists. But I think the thing that frustrates me the most is this slow realization that I'm having that Canada isn't the same great place to live that it used to be. I mean, just listen to what this immigrant said.
What is the biggest thing you regret in life?
I regret in life? I regret coming to Canada because if I had stayed in the Caribbean, I would have been way better. I came to Canada, I worked, I don't know, maybe 20 years. I had to go back to my country. 7 years, living here for 20 years, 7 years of my country, give me enough money to buy 2 properties in Canada cash. 7 years, 7, and 20 years you're just paying rent and nothing. It tells me Canada is just a trap. I own property and it's hard for me. So imagine people who come from different countries for the first year and you're wasting your time, you're gonna stress out, you're gonna go crazy, and you're gonna die in less than 10 years, when in your country, which would have been harder, you live for another 40, 50 years. No matter how bad it is in your country, it's only gonna get worse here. I'm telling you the truth. I travel the world and live a good life, all kind of stuff. Idea of Canada is to get out of Canada, not to get in. And I've realized that between America and Canada, the people who are living back in their country are living better than us who are living over here.
Is Canada really a trap? Let me know in the comments.
You smart. You very smart.